Welcome to Gambling with an Edge. And now, here are Bob and Richard.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Gambling with an Edge. I'm Bob Dancer.
And I'm Richard Munchkin.
Our guest today is surveillance expert T Dane. He's the author of the book Behind the Black Dome. T Dane, welcome to Gambling with an Edge.
Hey, how's it going, guys? I'm glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
All right, let's talk about your name, T Dane. That sounds pretty unusual. How did it come about?
I used to go to the. Actually, I got it from a movie. I used to go to the library a lot, and I would get books and movies. And one of the movies that I got was a Steven Seagal film called Under Siege. And there was a bad guy there named Travis Dane. And I was watching the movie, and I think I had the captions on. One of the lines was, "Chance favors the prepared mind." So that kind of just stuck with me, and then I kind of just used his name. I used the first initial and the last name, and that was it. And that's how I got T Dane, because of that movie. It was Travis Dane.
So can you tell us what Steven Seagal is really like?
No, but I can, and that's a story for another day.
Oh, okay. You had a book.
Yeah.
You had a book, Behind the Black Dome. It was published 8 years ago. It's about surveillance. When new, it cost about $90. Now you can get a Kindle edition for $10 or so.
Yeah.
How much of that book is relevant today, and how much is just dated information?
I would say that at least 80% of that book is still usable today. I mean, the outdated parts of that book is probably just the quick mentions of like VCRs and tape change and all that. But for the most part, not much has changed, man. At least as far as in Nevada, besides the transition from analog to digital, I think for the most part, my book still stands today as far as getting information on how surveillance operates.
I just want to, for our listeners, I just want to, as a little bit of introduction, T Dane, you worked primarily around Nevada. You worked in both large strip casinos and downtown and local casinos. And then you did also do some work in other states. Is that right?
Yeah, so most of my experience is in Nevada, but I did work outside of Nevada a couple of times. So, yeah, I got that too.
And how many years total did you put in surveillance?
I would say around 13 to 14 years total.
Are you still in surveillance?
No. I've been out of surveillance for quite some time now. I'm not involved in the gaming industry yet.
Okay, so now you're doing things unrelated to the gaming industry.
Yes.
Okay.
And why did you leave? Was it the fabulous pay or the wonderful hours?
It's just I think I made my career already as far as putting in time in surveillance. I kind of didn't want to go forward anymore with that, and just a choice that I decided that I didn't want to continue anymore to be in that industry, and I'm trying to look at things outside of the gaming industry. But being in Vegas, man, really not a lot of choice, really.
Right.
So even though you're no longer in the surveillance, let's ask questions about the current situation coming in the pandemic with the mask and stuff. So using your experience for some educated guesses, wearing masks. How much would that make surveillance life difficult?
It's going to be, I mean, a big part of what surveillance does is to identify people. You know, that's what we do. If there's an incident happening, we have to identify the people involved. So with that, having, you know, with people walking around with masks and, you know, everywhere, and it's becoming the norm, then it's really hard to get that, to identify people with that. You know what I mean? Whether you're a player on the table trying to just play, I mean, how do I say this? It's going to be harder to identify players in real time with, you know, with people wearing masks and all that. And even after the fact, you know, including, you know, we always, you know, if we try to run incidents back and we have to identify that player, we rely on cameras. And these cameras are these ID cameras that we have set up in the casino. They're actually called choke point cameras. And if people are, you know, covered in their face, you can't really identify anybody with that. So it's just going to make things harder for surveillance. It's not going to make anything easier, you know.
I want to ask more about that. If Richard and I walked up to each other and both were wearing masks, I would know when he was 25 feet away that it was him, and he would know when I was 25 feet away that it was me by the way we walk, by the clothes we wear, by the whatever. So masks do some disguise, but if you really know somebody, mostly masks don't change that much.
It's easy.
But what surveillance guy really knows, you know, me or you, Bob? I mean, yeah, we know each other, but for a surveillance guy, he doesn't know my walk or my dress or whatever.
Actually,
well, we weren't going to talk about when you wear your dress, but okay.
I mean, just, you know, having, you know, looking through cameras and then having different angles of people and all that, it's not the same as, you know, you see someone walking in front of you, you know, it's still hard to identify people. It was already hard identifying people with just a hat on, and then just add another mask on there and baby glasses, then you really can't see anything anymore. You know what I mean?
Right. So could you mentioned a big part of your job was identifying people. Can you give me an example of that other than the obvious, you have someone you think is a card counter or something and that's playing as a refusal, but can you give me some other examples of when you would want to be identifying people?
Well, there's a lot of, you know, let's say like high action players. You get them, you know, your local or your regular high action players that come to the table. You want to identify them, and because sometimes they don't like to give their player's card, but we already know who that person is, and we can still rate them just knowing who they are. Just because they refuse to give that player's card doesn't mean we can't put a rating down. You know what I mean? So that's just one part of identifying people. You know what I mean?
And would that come from the pit? Would they call you and say, "Hey, do you know who this guy is?"
Yeah, they would, because as soon as, you know, the high action plays gets called anyway, you know, they're betting a big amount on the table. It's a trigger for a phone call to surveillance. And then from there, the first thing we do is look at the player. So we'll put a camera on his face to try to identify him. How do you do that now with a mask, you know?
Right.
And how do you even ask someone to take their mask off just to identify that person, you know? Will there be a policy for that? I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. So so at like a major strip casino, what kind of action would make that phone call happen? So you're saying if I sat down and started betting purple chips, they would automatically call surveillance and say, "Who is this guy?"
Oh yeah, definitely. That's purple action. I think there's not much in the black, but the purple action for sure, and then anything above that will, trigger a phone call surveillance.
And so let's say that happens, and I'm not using the player's card, and you don't recognize my face. Would you do anything beyond that, or would you just say, we have no idea who he is?
Oh, no, then if we don't know the player, then that's when we conduct a skills check on that player. Depending on how busy the room is, maybe we can put it aside because the player's just flat betting purple chips anyway. But let's say the player was moving from 500 to 3,000, then, I can't just put that on the side. I can put the flat better on the side, but then on this one that I don't know, any information about, we have to conduct a skills check on that player just to see what he's doing. And it'll probably take a couple of shuffles anyway. It doesn't take too much time, but once you start to see patterns, then you can start to say, hey, this warrants more investigation, or this warrants more observation. That's when
would that only happen on blackjack, or would that happen on other games as well?
It happens in every game, whether it's a card in the game, craps, roulette, blackjack, just any game really. If there's big money betting, big money being played out there, doesn't matter where it is. It doesn't have to be advanced play. It could be, it has something to do with collusion or cheating. So we always have to look for those things, not just is this guy counting? No, we have to go past that too. Whether if he's not moving with a count, right? Let's say it's just flat betting, doesn't mean that he's not cheating. So we have to look at all those avenues and eliminate them. So.
Do you, at any of the places you worked, would they ever send a surveillance guy down onto the floor to look at players?
Yes. It's actually more, how do you say it? We do send people out there just because sometimes we cannot see the angle. Like if there's like a blind spot or our cameras couldn't, find that angle that we're looking for, then we'll send somebody over there just to see what's happening. And then, surveillance don't have uniform. We don't have ID, name tags, and all that. So we kind of blend in with the crowd anyway. So.
Now, at the places that you worked, how much of the focus, during a normal day was on advantage play, and how much was everything else?
I think the focus on advantage play on a normal day, I would say, if it's a busy day, I don't think there's much focus on that. I think there's so much stuff going on in the room anyway. There's a lot. The phone keeps ringing. There's a lot of phone calls that happen. There's a lot of investigations that happen that needs to be completed. Past investigations that needs to be completed. Reports that needs to be written. But advanced play, I would say a good 20% of what we do. We look for that.
That's pretty high. 20%. That's higher than I would have thought.
So, because I just looked at my book recently just to see what I wrote in there and kind of brush up on it. But when I was doing the database, it was 20% advantage players is what we were doing, in the entire database that we had. I would say, not that.
Would the bosses ever put a bounty on it, such as anybody who catches a counter and gets him removed gets $50 or something like that? Does that ever happen in the places you work?
Like an incentive.
Incentive, okay.
Yeah, but we get incentives, but I think it's from our not from the department budget. I think it's just, our management trying to motivate us to get people to show productivity. I think that's what they do. I've seen some incentives. I think some of them are it's not like $100 incentive or bonus. You don't get none of that. But maybe a free buffet. You know what I mean? They'll give you free buffet. Free movie tickets. I've seen those happen. So yeah, but not
for what exactly? Free movie passes for what? Catching a card counter?
It depends. It just depends. It's not necessarily just card counter. If it's like a good bus, it could even be let's say a procedure violation that you ended up saving the company money for. You know what I mean? Let's say a dealer mistakenly paid a $1,500 losing bet. You know what I mean? And then we watched that live, and if we didn't catch that live, that would have been a $1,500 loss. I'm not saying $1,500 would give you movie tickets, but I'm just saying, stuff like that. It's not
that
just,
time. I see.
Yeah, it's not just card counting or advanced play, but maybe finding a theft, internal theft. That would be a pretty good time to, give incentive to your employees.
Huh.
Okay. In your book, at one point you talked something about tunnel vision, where a player does, as soon as they get to the casino, they go one direction only, as though there's a magnet. And that pattern caught your eye. Do you remember that part of the book?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. So
Can you tell us about it?
What happened was there was this player who every day, it was the same routine every day. I worked the same shift too, so I would have a camera up, and for some reason, I think every time I look up, I see that person every time at the same time. And then he would go directly to the blackjack table and then play. And then it probably went on for at least a week. I think they were playing green chip at the time. I didn't watch them right away. But then when I started seeing the same person in the same day, it kind of just, I don't know, it just triggered something with me that this player keeps coming in and going to a blackjack table and playing the same game, not necessarily the same dealer. So when I took interest in that play, I ended up finding out that it was a card counter. So it's been going on for a week already. And then in my head, I'm like, I can't believe it. I've been watching the same player. I just wanted to see that it's not just randomly finding people on the table. I wanted to make a point that there are people out there that would do the same routine every day, just like you. When you go to work, they're also going to work. You know what I mean? So I just found it funny that, she didn't go to play slots or go to the restaurant. It was just directly at the game. That was it. Every day.
So
if she would have stopped...
Sorry, go ahead, Bob.
I'm sorry. If she would have stopped at the restroom or looked at a craps table first or something like that, then you would have ignored her. And
most likely.
But it was
it
was the same pattern over and over and over again. That's what caught your eye.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There was just one goal to be in that place, and that was it. If I had seen that player play other games, maybe roulette or craps or even a slot machine, it probably wouldn't trigger what I did that day. You know what I'm saying? Granted, it's been going on for at least 1 week already, but at the end of the day, I was still able to identify that player, and action was taken after that.
So did you, well, you must have, you worked at a lot of different places, but how did you use databases, and did you contribute to databases or just use them, and how did you use them? Did you find them useful?
Yeah, so for the properties I worked at least, always had a internal database, and that's where we put incidents in. It's like an incident reporting um, um, system, okay? And that's where you put people's pictures and information. Um, so it's all mixed inside that database. It's advantage players and cheats and high rollers, you know what I mean, and vendors, and then also the guests that are involved with risk management, you know, the slip and fall. That's what it's this one entire database that's just full of, you know, different patrons or players. And we also had an external database that is sometimes subscription based. And those are the ones that, you know, you guys already know, the SID, the Griffin, the OSN. But are they useful? Yes, they are. It's just nice to have that extra information. But how to use that information, it depends. You know what I mean? For the most part, you shouldn't even be using any information at any external database. You should focus more on the internal database, on what you guys find out within the company and those facts, you know what I mean, instead of using an external information. So I don't know if the external database is still around. I'm not sure. But the internal
OSN is definitely still around.
Okay.
You know, why people would pay for Griffin and things like that when OSN is free, I don't know. But did you contribute? Would your casinos contribute to the external databases?
Personally, the place I worked at, we did not. So we kept it to ourselves. I think we're selfish, that's why. But we built a massive database internally. I mean, we have.
And would you ever send out flyers to maybe other property? I'm sure with other properties within your same company, but other properties that weren't in your company?
No, at least when I was there, we did not send it outside of our company, but we would receive from outside companies. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So, yeah. That's how we work. So our internal database, if we were to send a flyer out, we could send it to our sister companies within our company, and then, but we would not share it to external, you know. But we do receive external emails or flyers from other companies, and we would just say, "Oh, yeah, this guy's active over at that property," you know.
Right.
Just so we have an idea, hey, this person's in town, you know. But we don't share as much as they do. You know.
What size win would trigger a tape review?
Say that again. What size would?
How much would somebody have to win for it to trigger automatically a tape review? Or did they not have any kind of threshold like that?
There is some thresholds, and it depends on the property, how big the property is, and what kind of action they get. You know, obviously in a strip property, they're not gonna do a review over $1,000, but some smaller properties would have that kind of threshold. You know what I mean? So it just depends on how the size of the property. But maybe, I think from what I remember, it was 10,000, 10 to 20,000, and then it would be on that list. You know, it doesn't mean that you have to do it. You still have to prioritize that list at threshold. You know, just because somebody won 20,000, you have to do that 20,000 right away, because somebody could have won 200,000, but that takes priority. You know what I mean?
Sure.
All right.
But
We
there's
are going to
definitely
take
thresholds, yeah.
We are going to take a brief break for commercials. We're going to come back with T Dane and, among other things, ask him about the state of facial recognition software. The South Point has more than 10,000 games, returning more than 99%. This is more than anyone else has. Beginning July 1st, the Spin to Win promotion is in effect every Monday through Thursday, 3 a.m. to 2:59 a.m. the following day. Players who play 500 points at slots or 2,000 points at video poker will receive a free virtual spin at their machine. A player may earn up to 4 spins per day. Spins will either be points, redeemable for cash or free play, or free play itself. Counting points and free play at face value, in past year the average spin has been about $12, making this a 0.6 promotion for video poker players, in addition to the regular 0.3% slot club for the first 8,000 of coin in per day. So this makes it a triple point promotion, 4 days a week, up to your first $8,000 coin in. On July 4th, there will be double points all day, all machines, all video poker machines, and 5 times points on all slot machines. At predicted.org, there's a market where you can place small bets on the occurrence of various political things, mostly but not entirely in the United States. Most active markets right now are who's going to be the nominee for vice president. Over the last few weeks, the prices have changed between Trump and Biden winning, as in the current situation, Trump's fortunes are falling. If you can correctly predict where they're going to end up on November, you can make yourself some money. Gambling with an Edge listeners receive a one-time offer of a deposit match up to $20 at predicted.org/promo/edge. You must play the money through once and cannot withdraw it for 30 days. Apprenticeship.com is an excellent site for those of you who wish to be successful at counting cards at blackjack. Their boot camp, midweek boot camp, July 22nd to 23rd, still has openings. Their one the following weekend, July 25th to 26th, is full. Another thing to mention is blackjackapprenticeship.com does have an interview with T Dane that you can check out for free if you desire to do so. Videopoker.com is the best place to play lots of games. If you sign up for the gold membership, $8.95 a month or $79.95 a year, this allows you to get correction on most of the games. The game of the week is multi-strike poker. This is a game where you pay for 4 lines at the start. That means 20 coins. You play the first line. If you do not score anything, the game is over and you've lost 20 coins. If you at least get your money back, you get to play the second line at double the amount for no additional coin in. When there, you play at the 4 times line. When there, you get the 8 times line. Periodically receive free rides before the draw, which moves you up to the next higher line, whether you score anything on the current line or not. It does require 4 separate strategies, whereas the very top line is, or free ride, is the same as normal strategy for a game, but all other cases, it's a slightly altered strategy because there's more to come after this hand is over. A good strategy and practice may be found at the software Video Poker for Winners. We are back talking to T Dane, and he told us that his friends now call him TD, so I'm feeling friendly. So, TD, tell us about your experience with facial recognition. Does it work? Or how well did it work when you left? And what are your thoughts about it now?
My only experience with facial recognition is they were not accurate. I don't know the current state it's in, but I still don't believe in its capability. I believe nothing will replace the trained personnel in identifying players. Especially with going back to that mask. I mean, facial recognition is pretty much out the door already again with the use of mask inside casino. Oh, one thing I wanted to add with that mask too that surveillance should be focusing on now that there's a lot more patrons on the floor with masks is robbery. I think that would be the biggest threat to the casino right now as far as patrons with masks on the floor. But going back to facial recognition, I don't believe in it. Maybe I'll change my mind if I see it again. But for now, I don't think it's that helpful.
And I have not worked in surveillance. A couple years ago, I did have a lunch with Ted Whiting, who was in charge of surveillance for all the MGM properties. And he was convinced that the new system 2 years ago was very good and could help them identifying people. I have not had any occasion to ask him in the last 2 years. I'm assuming the technology is getting better. There have been recent news situations where the police used facial recognition and they arrested the wrong man. And there's also been other news that some company has gathered pictures of so many million pictures on Facebook and other places in creating their databases that those databases were more for police departments, but I'm assuming casinos could buy those databases should they want to. So this is all speculation on my part. I have never worked for surveillance at all.
Yeah. Speaking of social media, how much did you use social media in the surveillance room? Were you did people try to look up at known advantage players or players in their social media to see what they could find out?
I did. I know I did. I did a lot of that before. We were trying to piece together people who knows people and all that. But yeah, definitely. Before, back in the day, if you were in the surveillance room and then you were browsing on the internet, it's actually a no-no. The management doesn't like it. They like you to be on that camera watching stuff. But we had internet access. We just weren't allowed to use it. But, with time, obviously things changed. We were able to use that tool and use it to our advantage. Let's say, the way the church team was pieced together was through MySpace.
MySpace?
Used today. Yeah. It's not even used today, but that's how far we go back. But everything now is actually just a lot easier, Facebook being there and other social media things, that people's lives are online and it's just easier to see. And some of these players do put their lives online. I mean, their AP endeavors online. Just if I was to look at, let's say, Instagram right now and put hashtag card counter, you will see results. You know what I mean? And you could put any other hashtags out there, advantage player, whole card play. You will get results. And it's just so weird why would, they put that online? But definitely, surveillance should use that tool if they could. They should. Really.
That is kind of mind-boggling that they would put that online, especially with the hashtag to make it easier for you to find them.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And then, of course, they're rated. They have names. It's just easier to put that and see if the profile is public. And then from there, you can go to the friends list and see, oh, who does he know? Oh, that's another familiar name right there. And then you piece them together, and then you get more information, beyond what happened on the table. So, yeah, it does help. I want to add, there's a lot of AP message boards here and there. And it actually evolves too. Every time I look at, before I would just, I would look at the AP message board, see what they're talking about, see if they're talking about my property and all that. But today, as I see the message board, it also evolves. And they're getting smarter too, these advantage players. Instead of putting Paris Casino, they would put PA and then space RIS. You know what I mean? So when people surveillance try to Google that, it doesn't connect anymore. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
it's definitely a cat and mouse game happening on the tables and online.
Let's talk about license plate recognition. Was that being used when you were active, and how valuable does surveillance find that?
Yes. So the license plate recognition, I had experience with that too. It's highly accurate. I mean, if it's a camera that recognizes numbers and letters, it's going to be accurate versus, a camera that recognizes, a face. But with my experience with LPR, it actually helps us too, But being on the strip, there's a lot of rental cars being shuffled around. So when we input a rental car a license plate in, and then it would trigger a notification to us, and it ends up being a different person. And that's when we figure out, hey, this could be a rental. So, but it's another tool that surveillance uses that actually helps. So those are the things that surveillance should always have.
So where at the property where you worked, did you have it trigger you if a known advantage player's license plate came into the garage?
Yes. Only if we input that license plate in. If we, sometimes there's back off that happen from the cage, and then we end up following the player to the car. And it's just another information that we can take. If we could, then we would zoom in at the license plate and jot it down. And then from there, I could use that information and put that in my LPR system, and it just sits there until the next time that license plate comes up. So it's just a tool to use. But it's not like for every back off, we always follow the advantage player to the car. It's not always like that.
Sure. But did you have access, let's say that you weren't able to identify a person, but you followed them to the car, got the license plate. Did you have a way of then using that license plate to check the person's DMV and find out who they were?
No, we do not. I've actually never done that. I don't think we've ever given that information just for advantage play. If it's a different event or incident, then yeah, we would, give it to security, and security usually gives it to the police. It just depends on the incident. But for advantage play, no, we don't try to go out of our way to.
Right. Just as a warning to our listeners, that may be true in Nevada, but there are other states where they absolutely get help from the police and are given that information. I got flyered one time that way, where they got my license plate and were able to look up my DMV. Not in Nevada, in another state.
I think that happened to watching Inside the Edge, and happened to Casey too, right? where they took his license plate, he got pulled over after the fact. You know what I mean? So yeah, I mean, things happen outside of Nevada I don't know about. I don't suggest they do that, but I guess I don't know how they do things over there in other states. But in Nevada, I would tell you that we don't get your license as an advanced player. We don't get your license plate and then contact the police or DMV for just to get a name. No, we don't do that. But if it's a robbery, then yeah, we have to get that information. You know.
How many advantage players per week would you see coming through?
I never really counted how many advantage players in a week. But I would say, I was to guess, in my experience, maybe 2-3 times a week.
Okay, so it's pretty rare.
Yeah. It's not like you get them like 5 times a day or anything like that. No, it's not like that. I mean, if it is, we're not catching them.
Right.
We need to do better.
So briefly, you were an advantage player, and because of license plate recognition, would you park somewhere else? Like if it was downtown and you hypothetically you were going to be wanting to play at the Four Queens, would you like park at the Fremont, which is across the street, and play enough at the Fremont that you got your licensing validated, and then walk across the Fremont Street Experience to play at the Four Queens? And so even if they caught you, their cameras would not go into the Fremont garage. Would you do things like that, or would you recommend things like that?
No, I don't try to, if I do go out there, I don't try to think about, they're going to get my license plate or anything like that. I think for me, it's just anything that is, what do you call that, easier. That's where I would put it.
I would say, if at all possible, I would never park where I play. I would never stay in the hotel where I play. Now, if it's, an Indian casino out in the middle of nowhere, sometimes you don't have a choice. But certainly in a play anywhere in Nevada or anywhere in Las Vegas, there's no reason to park at a place where you're going to play.
Yeah. Well, before I used to look for just free parking. Yeah. I think Venetian had free parking at the time. And I would just walk down that whole strip right there.
Using players' cards, how much information on the player's card actually helps surveillance?
It helps a lot. The player's card, it has all your history inside that property from the time that you first inserted that player's card to the last time you inserted it. So it gives us a whole breakdown of how you play, what you play, the certain times that you play, if we could find that. If there's a pattern that you only go there every swing shift, or what kind of machines you like, what kind of table games you like, you're losing, whether or not you're losing or winning, for the year or a lifetime. It also shows us your credit line if you are a high roller. It's just so much information in there. Your IDs in there that we could use for us. And it also helps us track movement within the casino. Whether you're, last night he was at BJ5, or the night before he was at BJ5. So if we're going to scrutinize the play, we want to look for patterns. Let's say if we were suspecting collusion, I would have to place your history with the dealer's schedule. So those information right there is beyond what cameras show, So it's just mining data for us, and the player's card helps us with it,
So
it also
how big a red? how big a red flag is it if for people to be refusals?
As a refusal, it actually triggers a phone call right away, especially if they're spreading. If they're not spreading too much, or let's say a refusal of a red chip player, then it doesn't get called. But if it goes to the green zone and it's a refusal with the spread, that triggers a quick phone call to surveillance. And most of the card counters that we deal with actually plays at that level, at the green level, spreading from 25 to 200 times 2 and stuff like that.
But if it's a refusal on a carnival game, would that trigger a phone call?
I remember refusal on carnival. Yeah, it would. If it's, again, maybe table max, you know what I mean? If it's table max. Yeah. And usually the table max in Carnegie are lower. So.
Many players rat hole chips, meaning put the chips in their pocket surreptitiously. Was looking for that part of what you did at surveillance, or when you did see it, just kind of accidentally, would you report it?
We did rat holing. A lot of people, whether it's ploppies or advanced player, it kind of became common now that people actually keep chips everywhere. But the way that we use it for surveillance, advantage play wise, when we see someone rat holing, it's pretty much you telling us that you don't want us to see how much you're winning, so you're trying to hide it. So you don't want to keep a stack of green, in front of you, or 2-3 stacks. You want to take that away, and then we see that happen. If I see a 3 stack of green in front of you, and all of a sudden I see you take 1 stack and put it in your pocket, it does trigger a suspicious move for me to scrutinize your play. So that's how I use rat holing. But if it's just a chip here and there, it's so normal to see, players on the floor do that, that it's not much of a trigger anymore,
Did you ever
did
you ever have any major cheating incidents? I don't mean, it seems to me that most cheating that gets caught is either employees caught stealing or drunken idiots doing something stupid. But did you ever have any what looked like a sophisticated cheating happen?
There are organized cheats out there. Some of them are they target games outside of blackjack. Some of them use devices, but cheating for the most part, when it comes to surveillance, it only makes up 10% of what we do. It's not common. I think it's more common, like you said, drunk people capping their bets or taking their bets off. That happens a lot more than those sophisticated ones that you're asking about. But if there are sophisticated cheats out there that does hit the casinos big, in baccarat, it happened in baccarat. Roulette, it happened in roulette. So they are out there, but not. I guess in surveillance we find it after the fact, and that's our job. We have to look for that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's exactly what vehicle checking is. You have to find it. So if I'm saying that only happened in baccarat and roulette, the next thing you know, there's another team out there today that is hitting craps or blackjack. So I don't know, but they are out there.
How many surveillance workers do you think know basic strategy or better for blackjack?
I'd say a good 80% of the room knows their basic strategy. Before, back in the day, maybe not. I think there were times before that rooms actually use this universal basic strategy, but they had different set of games in the casino floor, but they used the same basic strategy as a universal tool. And they would say, and they would rate players too. They would rate advanced players. They would say, this player had good basic strategy, or this player had bad basic strategy, based on that one chart that they have from the gift shop. But times changed now, you know what I mean? The rooms actually put a lot more training into that, because if you're going to watch a play and observe a play and then rate the play, you have to know how to play. I think it's being understood a lot more now than before. So I would say, yeah, a pretty good 80%. I wouldn't say 90 because others still don't know. Yeah, it's a lot smarter now, I can tell you that. But, you know, it's a lot easier now too. So.
Okay, basic strategy though is a long way from knowing high-low. You know, so you could count the deck with the players. How many surveillance people are competent counters?
They or surveillance can actually pretty good at finding counters, but not so much as a card counter. But we can identify. That's our job, is to identify these players that are counting. As far as how good they are, it's pretty much universal. I know for a fact that majority of surveillance room use high-low. And if there's a operator inside that room that wants to use a different count system, I'm sure their management would tell them just stick with high-low, just so it's universal for everybody. But their job is to find those card counters, not as much as to be a card counter, if that makes sense. I don't know.
But do they, when they're doing a review, do they actually count themselves, or do they use the software to analyze the play?
It's both. So we could count the player down in real time and go with that, logging every hand, the count, the bet, the deviation. And then if we want to get more information, we can actually plug it in a system and rewind it, and then get more of a real report by a computer-generated report. I don't know if you guys are familiar. It's called BJ Survey.
Yeah, BJ Survey Voice. Yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes we use that for the bigger plays, like a $100,000 win. The upper management doesn't want to see a handwritten report of this player's count. They, especially if it's a $100,000 win, they would want a fully generated report with analysis on it, right? So that's when we would use those systems. Yeah. But we do count people down live, and then we also do after the fact. It just goes both.
So RFID chips, where they have a little something inside the chip, so it registers how much each player is using it. Did you ever work at a property which used the RFID chips? And if so, what was your experience there?
I don't have much experience with the RFID. I think it was I don't know when exactly they came out, but I don't think I've heard about it, but I don't think I've ever seen it. As far as if you're asking whether your a stack of greens registers as 500 in my screen, no, I've never seen that happen. I've never, it scans your chips on the table and then it sends that information back to the surveillance room. No, I've never seen that. What we do is we actually zoom in a camera. We use a couple of cameras to zoom in on your bets and then in the entire layout, and that's how we can figure out how much you're betting. Yeah.
What percentage of time is heat generated from the pit boss versus just coming from surveillance on its own?
I can't put a number to it, but it happens a lot. You know, it's the frontline employees or the dealers or the pit supervisors. They actually should be helping us in identifying these players on the floor because they are frontline employees. It does happen, you know, like I said, the spread, if there's a big spread, if it's a refusal, if it's purple action, black action, then the pitch should, you know, call us as a courtesy call. And then from there, we can use that information whether or not to move forward with that player or, you know, move on to a different player that we're actually watching. But it helps a lot that they are on the floor and then telling us, because there's a lot of people on the floor and there's only so many of us in surveillance, you know what I mean? And the cage still calls us for fills, and there's so much happening, so much things happening that it's not just, I'm always here in surveillance looking for advanced players. No, there's a lot of things happening.
Right. So normally you wouldn't just pick somebody off just by looking around the casino for somebody that might be an advantage player. Usually it's going to be triggered by somebody calling you.
No. We could actually do that too. We actually look at, it depends on the room. Sometimes we proactively look for those players ourselves, and then sometimes it's, you know, it's from the pit information that we take action on. And then when that happens, you know, obviously, let's say the pit calls me for a player, right? And it turns out to be an advantage player. Now I have to write my report saying the pit called me to watch this player. That's how my report starts. And then it turned out to be an advantage player. So that's like a, you know, good job, pat on the back of that for a person, right? But it sounds a lot more better if you proactively look for them, because now your report starts off at, I conducted a breakdown on this player, and he turns out to be an advantage player. So, and then I send that report. So that's how you know what I mean? That's how it's weighed, you know, between them calling us and us proactively looking for them.
Very good. We want to thank you, T Dane. His book is Behind the Black Dome. It's available in Kindle. And it was very interesting. Thank you very much. We wish you continued success. Richard, thank you. Go out and hit lots of royal flushes, everybody. Good day.